Welcome to Byte by ewiz. On this podcast, we explore interesting AI and tech related stories which can help e-commerce growth leaders make smarter and faster decisions. And today we have a machine learning genius with us, Rishabh. He was part of the Spotify team where he created amazing AI-powered personalization engine, and we all know the recommendations on Spotify are amazing. Right now, he works with ShareChat, where uh, he is creating a user-focused ecosystem for personalized content. I got that right, Rishabh,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Great, Rishabh. Welcome to Byte, and happy to have you here.
Thank you,
And
Deepak. Sorry, go ahead.
no worries, no worries. Yeah. So, and also we have Devesh with us, who's our senior operator, who is basically part of our team and also explores all those stories with us. So, thank you, Devesh, for joining us. So, the most basic question, Rishabh, we'll start with is, and this has been my experience when I talk to people about personalizations. There are so many definitions. For some, it is simply personalizing the name or company name or an email. For some, it is just showing personalized ads. For some, it is the thing which you see on an e-commerce store. And it is an abuse word. That is what my perception has been, the way you use creative in the marketing field. So that's what I think. So if you had to define personalization in simplest words, how would you do that?
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Deepak and Devesh for the invitation. I'm very happy to talk about this topic. This topic of personalization is very close to me as a scientist, as an engineer, as a developer in the user-centric world. So as you know, even at ShareChat at Spotify, I've spent years developing these machine learning models for personalization. So when I think about personalization, right, personalization to me is, can I understand about user needs? Can I develop sophisticated user understanding, and again provide them content and services which are tailored specifically to suit their user needs? So I think often we end up with one size fits all is not the world we live in anymore, right? So it's like we don't want to have one offering and then we have 100 million users use that offering. We want to understand on a per user basis what kind of requirements, what kind of preferences, what kind of topical interests, what kind of interest profiles people have. And then we want to look at, okay, what do we have to offer? And from among the many choices we have to offer, can I select something which the user will really like and the user will really engage with? So personalization to me is developing a lot better understanding about users, about their interest, to the extent that oftentimes we can maybe find out more about the user than they themselves know about themselves, right? If you look at Spotify, if you look at ShareChat, we've been looking at data across 100, 200 million users over a long period of time, right? I mean, Spotify has access to my music trajectory, right, in the last 10, 12 years. So how I am evolving as a user now, if somebody else starts the first non-Bollywood song they hear, you can start making predictions about user journeys, right? So again, you can extrapolate a lot from all the other users and then maybe inform that, hey, this user might end up there in 2 months time, in 6 years time, in 1 year's time. So it's about how do I understand what happens on my platform with this large scale data and then tailor my services for the user essentially. So that to me is personalization. And the more we can understand, the more we can get the feedback from the user, the better we can tailor the services.
Amazing. I like the way you define that. It is essentially getting closer to the user and knowing more about them so you can tailor the whole experience.
Right.
So what triggered you to get into this?
Yeah, I think so again, data driven, right? I think it's in 2022, I mean, if you're not employing data to your advantage, then you're missing out, right? I mean, again, even 10 years ago, 2012, 2013 is when I started venturing into machine learning. Again, I graduated from BITS. I went to Goldman, worked with a lot of pricing data over there. I started my PhD 2013, 2014 on search and recommendation systems, looking at machine learning for this data. And I think one of the reasons why I love personalization is because it's just omnipresent. I mean, you start using some of these apps like Facebook, your social media on LinkedIn, Twitter. So then of course, you can do a lot of personalization there, but it's not just about that, right? If you start looking into finance now, Robinhood and Zerodha, they're going to start giving you personalized interest rates. I mean, the credit scoring agency, right? I mean, the insurance deals you have internationally, they are always personalized. What's your risk profile to me as a company? And a lot of these personalized financial decisions are happening across the companies in the world. And I think it's just a matter of time a lot of our Indian companies start adopting more of a, like, yeah, I mean, the loan rate I offer to you is personalized based on your behavior and my prediction about whether you are gonna repay the loan to me or not, right? I mean, we start even not just in finance, right? I mean, like the automobile industry, the insurance you give out on your car, all of these could potentially be personalized to your needs. So essentially, like the way I see it, a lot of times wherever you have these user touch points on your system, you can collect data about the user and then you can make them an offering which is tailored to them itself. And one of the things which I'm not actively working on it, but just kind of observing what's happening, it's personalized medicine, right? I mean, right now you have one doctor and like that doctor can only see like 20, 15 patients in a day. But then like, how do we scale that out? And can we have personalized medicine pop up as well? So there's a lot of like trials going on wherein, I mean, there are these dedicated treatment plans getting developed based on your historic medical history, based on what kind of drugs will impact you the most, what kind of drugs will be best suited, will give you the minimum side effects, right? So if you take a step back, then if you look at the broader lens of the industry, then we've done a lot of great work in personalizing the online applications for you, like the food you see on Zomato, on Uber Eats, on Swiggy. I mean, that's ranked, right? There's a bandit model which is showing that, hey, I think you might like a Thai restaurant today, so I'm going to show that at the top. But then it's going in from outside the internet and just online applications to your real world activities as well, right? I mean, personalized delivery of content from online to real world, like health, medicines, looking at finance, looking at the interest rates, all of these are getting personalized. So again, what excites me the most is that this is everywhere. And when I started working as a scientist on this problem, then I do kind of try to get a sense of that, what are these problems which can be used for this company, this industry, but also what are these solutions which we can develop for the wider industry. So oftentimes, right, the methods and the models and the algorithms we develop, they're not just, I mean, hopefully we build them for sustainability, that it's not just something for a very specific case of music recommendations, but then the model is widely, generally more applicable, even if you want to move from music recommendations to food recommendations, to social media content recommendation, to movie recommendation on Netflix, and even to like maybe some personalized healthcare or some policy design around insurance policy and all that. So I think like the omnipresence of the need for personalization, and for us as engineers and scientists, how do we develop these models which can be used across different industries? I think that's very attractive about this for me.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned, I am just thinking of, so I mean, our perspective when it comes to personalization, especially from marketing, it was either related to the ads or the emails or e-commerce tools.
Right.
With the medicines and everything, I mean, it just got me thinking what else could be done beyond this point, and we might not be even aware of that piece.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like if you start looking, right, I mean, Baiju and all the other Unacademy, they're personalizing the education we offer to you. So why should I have a fixed curriculum for a user, for a student? Some students are very sharp, some students are stuck in some topics, right? So I think we are already in India, right? We are developing these models across the education and tech industry, wherein, hey, you have a different pace of education, you have a different pace of learning, and then I can predict where you might get stuck and then tailor my curriculum to you, right? So I think we're in this decade, it's coming in the next decade, like the online education, people learning at their own pace, rather than like going into school factories and like teaching, getting taught with the same students on the same curriculum. It just doesn't work anymore, right? So essentially, we are starting to see a disruption in the education industry happening. You see Lambda School, you see Growth School, you see a lot of these like online applications, people dropping out of colleges, not because they should, but because they can see the value of personalized education tailored at their pace, right? And maybe on their topics of interest as well. I mean, we have the school curriculum, which hasn't been changed in like 10, 20 years. And then like, I mean, if you want to develop some good microeconomic theory skills as an economic student, then like we don't offer that to you in school right away. So then why delay that? So I think people are substituting, and not substituting right now, they're complementing their school curriculum, their college curriculum with additional online learning, right? So I think this is happening. I mean, and more touching upon each aspects in our daily life.
I guess it is more about making things easy for all the participants who are present in that model. Right? Suppose if we are talking about our e-commerce model, then the seller and the buyer, if we are through personalization, we are making it easy for both of the participants to explore new things. So that's what I guess all the personalization main like objective is all around.
Yes, I mean, like I think like that's an excellent point. I think like one of the things which I'm very interested in has been this, like, how can I use personalization, not just for the user, but for the other stakeholders in the platform as well? Like on e-commerce platforms, right? You have these sellers. Now, as a seller, I want the platform to find me people who will really like my products. And I have a limited budget, right? I won't pay for so many ads. I won't pay for so many customer acquisition. I mean, even I have a limited customer acquisition budget, right? Everybody is aware of the CAC numbers, like how much does this cost for me to get a new customer? And I want to be mindful, right? If I have a budget of attracting 100 people, I'll rather attract the people who are very interested in what I'm selling and who would come back and form a long-lasting relationship with me, right? So it's more of a brand relationship which I want to maintain. Like you buy a first shoe from this, and then you go and buy a second running shoe. You kind of, I mean, even if I have a Peloton bike at home, right? I mean, I'm kind of buying its accessories, and you kind of, all the Apple products you see, right? It's not just a one-off transaction. All these retailers are saying that, hey, you come and get involved in our ecosystem, and we have a brand offering to you. We're kind of giving you a collection of items, and then you can buy one, come back for the other one, you enjoy the process, right? What's happening here? What's happening here is that there's a strong need for the retailers, and the request is that, hey, like, find me the best suited customers for me who would enjoy my product, rather than any 100 random users who may or may not like what I want, what we are offering, right? And I think this is not just on the retailers. Let's take a step back. I think this is happening in the wider industry as well. Like we call it marketplace, like multi-stakeholder recommendations. So again, like in the last 3-4 years, I've done a lot of tutorials, a lot of papers on this topic. We filed close to 10 patents in this space during my work at Spotify, starting to do that here at ShareChat. The point over here is that most of these systems should not just be user-centric systems. I mean, we've lived in a world wherein we started using Google.com, Google search engine for everything. And that was very user-centric. A user has a need, and I want to kind of fulfill that need. But most of the systems which you are interacting with now are not just user, but multi-stakeholder systems. Let me give you an example. If you look at like Swiggy, right? Swiggy or Zomato. So it's not just about the user, it's about what restaurants are on my platform. And it's not just about user restaurants, what delivery partners are earning. So, I mean, the systems we are developing, the personalization systems we are developing, they have an economic impact on the society. Like people, I grew up in Lucknow, people in Lucknow, the restaurants in Lucknow, whatever Uber Eats or Zomato decides to show in to Lucknow users, those are the restaurants who are going to earn money today. So some restaurants which your model decides not to show up to users, they're not going to earn money. Same for delivery partners. Some delivery partners get a lot of traffic, they get a lot of requests, but some others might just not get any requests. And it has an economic impact. Why? Because I, as a delivery partner, am not making money because your model decided to prioritize other delivery partners, other restaurants. So what's happening is that a lot of the personalization solutions we are developing has a huge economic impact on your retailers, on e-commerce platforms, on these restaurants and these Zomatos and Swiggies of the world, on the delivery partners, on the Uber drivers. So that's why it's very mindful when you're developing these personalization services, you just don't personalize for the user. You personalize keeping in mind that what is the stakeholder need? Like, what do my retailers want? What kind of audience targeting we want to do there? What kind of restaurants? I mean, what kind of fairness initiatives do you have? Are you very biased towards popular restaurants and popular retailers, and you're not caring about all the long tail of retailers do you have? Especially in an e-commerce world, right? Let me bring it back. So in an e-commerce world, you'll have, let's say, a few thousand or 10,000, 100,000 retailers. And of course, there's always a distribution. Like there's a top head of retailers, everybody wants to buy their products. And then you start going into niche categories and there's a long tail, right? Now, usually the Pareto principle applies, like 80% purchases happen in 20% of these retailers, right? But that's not good because as a platform, it's my job to shift consumption towards tail. That, I mean, especially in the internet, right? I mean, it's not just the world wherein you're liking only the Ed Sheerans and Sonu Nigams of the world. Like I have a niche taste in music. There is an Avadi single of Ghazal from Lucknow. I would want to get exposed to that and want to listen to that music, right? So developing niche interest, not just on music, on movies, but also on like when I'm buying products on e-commerce websites, I want to, hey, I'm very interested in like these cute robotic things, right? I mean, I have a small robot, I can put it up and then it's going to do a mini dance, right? So there's going to be some retailers who are creating these custom small toys for me, right? And I have this niche interest. And I mean, I love astronomy. I have a t-shirt astronomy. I have this image of astronomy. So what are the retailers you have on your platform who are interested in astronomy as a category, and they're developing some cute toys for me, which I can buy, right? I would love to have, I mean, of course, my wife will disagree, but even if I have a bed sheet for like full of astronomy images, I would love to buy them, right? But then like, do you have those retailers on your platform? Are you exposing them to me? This is not a popular topic, right? This is a niche topic. You have to understand that, hey, I as a user have this niche interest, but then there are these niche creators, there are these niche retailers on your platform, and then you are doing justice to them that, hey, you know what? I care about you. I mean, I know most of my traffic, most of my money on the platform is made by the head retailers, but I do care about you. So I'll make sure that you get your dedicated audience, right? So audience targeting for niche content so that I'm fair to my tail retailers as well. This is a very important problem. And we need to develop proper machine learning models which can start doing that. Up until now, it's talking very broadly in a product sense, right? But how can I mean, I never bought an astronomy item from you, right? So you have no clue that I have an interest in astronomy as a topic as well. So how can we develop systems which can do some exploration, that I know you like these two things, but I have these 10 other categories as well. Let me try to explore a bit more, right? Let me try to show some random things to you and learn from you. I showed something, you didn't like it. Okay, cool. You don't like it. But then like maybe I showed some other random thing and, oh, you liked it, right? So then maybe I can learn, but you can do some intentional, intelligent exploration as well. That, hey, this user is into machine learning. He's bought a lot of like computer applications. He's bought a book around data and all that. So maybe this user is likely to buy some more geeky products than somebody else, right? So how do you extrapolate from a user's interest and maybe map it to some of these tail creators? So this is where, like, again, I'm not going to go into details unless you force me to, but we have a lot of these bandits, contextual bandit models. So contextual bandit models are machine learning models, which are saying that I'm going to do exploration, exploitation. So exploration is that let me explore a bit more and find out what you might like. Exploitation is I'm going to exploit what I know about you. So I know you like these two categories. Next time you come on a platform, I'm going to exploit that knowledge and show you exactly these two categories. And then I can trade it off. Sometimes you come in, I exploit what I know about you. I keep showing you this content. But some other times, maybe 5% times, I do a random exploration that maybe let me show some of these, right? And maybe you like it, maybe you not like it. And then I can learn a bit more about you. So imagine doing that across like 100 million users, across all your retailers. If you set it up in the right way, then you can grow the audiences for your tail retailers on your e-commerce platform as well. So I think it's very important for the system designers of these personalization models to design it in a way that you don't go into filter bubbles, that I know you want this, I just keep on showing you that. So we want to facilitate discovery on the platform so that the retailers can benefit a lot.
Like it's about developing a taste for something new for better.
Yes. And like, I mean, I think if you look at Spotify, right? Spotify to me is not just a music catalog, right? I mean, like even ShareChat and Moj to me are not just like short video platforms wherein, I mean, it's not a catalog wherein like, I know what I want, I'll go and get it. I subscribe to the platform because I want to discover new content. Like I want to listen to new music. I want to listen to some new artists, or even like on Moj, I want to listen to some new latest trend. So discovery is an important goal. As user, I mean, it's not like a big iTunes catalog that, hey, you have these 100,000 songs, you know what you want, you go and pick it up. It's not a library, right? What's the difference? A physical library does no recommendation, but Amazon Books recommends that, hey, I think you might like this book. So there, right? I mean, the notion of discovery is important. That as a user, am I discovering newer taste? Am I evolving my taste profiles as well? And is my platform showing me the right discovery? So not all discoveries are good. I mean, you might show me some cooking videos and I might not like it, but you show me maybe some DIY robotics, I would love it. So understanding what kind of discovery is good for me, what kind of discovery is not good for me, doing that is important, right? There's one subtle point here on discovery, which is a very critical point. I think when you look at these user-centric systems, right, people view discovery as a good thing for the user, that users love to discover, so let me do more discovery. What they miss out on is that discovery is such an important attribute for the system platform and for your suppliers and for your retailers. Why? Because imagine if users don't discover anything, then you as a platform cannot make them do like any more things, right? I'll rather be a platform wherein my users are discovering new things all the time, because I can influence them. I can influence and show a tail creator to them, tail retailer to them, right? So, hey, you might want to discover this. So the users who are pro discovery as a platform, I love those users. Why? Because, I mean, I want to grow my audience for some of these tail retailers I have. Now I can pick up those users who love discovery and start showing some to them. And maybe they'll like it, they'll discover this and love it. So I think discovery serves as an important tool, not just for the user, but for the platform, for the retailers, right? So I think these platforms should start exposing more discovery content and inculcate the discovery habit in the user.
So there are two things which just popped to my mind basis what you just said. One is, if, and you briefly touched upon those topics, and if you had to explain how those personalized recommendations work in
Right.
in the simplest form, how would you do that? And the second, which I have personally experienced, is the recommendation fatigue. I don't know if that's a
Right.
term, but I have definitely experienced, especially on Kindle. It keeps me showing a particular set of genre because I read that. While I like
Right.
it, I would like you to surprise me sometimes. The discover
Yes.
piece, which you just said.
Yes.
So if you could touch upon these two things
Right.
in very simple terms, it would help.
Yes. Yeah. Let me go into like one level more detail around each of these, right? So basically, how do I develop a recommendation model for you? So what I would do is like, okay, I look at your history, like you've been on my platform for maybe a few months, maybe a few years, if you're Spotify or ShareChat, or you just new on my platform, right? I mean, depends. So now if I have your recent history, then I can develop a user profile for you. That user profile would be a user representation I learn on your behalf. So usually what typically people do is like they have these, we call them vectors, like a string of numbers, which is like maybe 100 dimensions, 200 dimensions, whatever. And they represent like what kind of interest do you have. So I can learn from your historic interactions, some topical preferences that, hey, you are interested in these topics, you're interested in these categories and so on. So once I do that, then I have a list of like, if I'm Spotify, I have close to what, 80 million music tracks. Like on ShareChat, we have access to like many, many millions of content every day. I have this huge catalog list. I have your user vector. I can do a dot product between two vectors. Now in maths, we spend a lot of time, even in class 11, 12, doing dot products between two vectors. Like give me vector 1, vector 2, the dot product will give me the cosine similarity, that how close are these vectors. Now your interest might be in this space, right? You're a vector from here to there. Some other topic is very similar, very close by. And you're interested in like maybe computer science, you're interested in like tech products, not in fashion, but maybe like some bit of like tech, some bit of like maybe slight more cooking. So if I get you a vector embedding in this space, I can find what are the products near your embedding, right? So maybe you're a vector here, and like in this neighborhood, there's a lot of like tech gadgets products. There's maybe some cooking related gadgets as well, which you might be interested in. But fashion, maybe that's far away from you in that space. What do? We have your representation, a vector for you. We have a vector for each of these items. We have like 10 million, 100 million items, whatever. And then I can do a dot product that gives me a measure of similarity between what you like and what this item is about. If I have to pick up the top 10, I can sort by this score, pick up the top 10 and show to you. Now, this is how a traditional recommendation system works, that we have your representation, I have the item representation, I can do a similarity. Again, like if you really go to the extreme, then we can develop some fancy neural networks. So deep learning is the in thing right now, and it's kind of, we're developing these large scale neural networks, which have millions and millions of parameters. What happens there is you tell me the user representation, the item representation, I have a neural network, I make a prediction that what's the probability of a user liking this content. And that probability is a score between 0 and 1. So if a score is close to 1, I know you will love it. The score is close to 0.1, 0.2, I know you might not love it. So we have these approaches wherein I can show some top five, top 6 to you. This is answering your first part, that how does personalization works. Now, let's come to the second part. The way I have learned your representation is using your history so far, right? In that history, you've only interacted with category C1 and C2. I never showed you category C1, so you never interacted with category C3. So I don't have any information about C3, C4, right? I only have information about your interest in C1 and C2. This is what filter bubble starts happening, that because I only show you C1, C2 content, you only have shown me interest in C1, C2. Now your user representation, your embedding is only about C1, C2. Now in that space, I only know that you're close to C1, C2. The C3, C4, C9, I have no clue. Why? Because I never showed that to you. So this is why the problem happens, right? Most of these recommender systems at the start, they're not doing any exploration at all. They're not diversifying. They're not showing discovery content. They're not exploration friendly at all. So what happens is you start going into this filter bubble. Like on your Kindle example, I'm sure like Amazon is doing a pretty great job, but sometimes it only learns about what you have already shown interest in. But then this is what we did at Spotify in 2017, 2018, around the time I joined, we started developing a bandit model, contextual bandit model. So contextual bandit model balances this exploitation and exploration. So what we do is, if I have to recommend maybe 10 items to you, right? What I'll do is 8 of them, I will use my representations, find the nearest items and show. 2 of them, I will put in some discovery content, put in some random content, or put in some things that users might, like you, might also like category C1, C2. right? So I can do some exploration and then bring that and show that to you. So when I recommend, it's not an item recommendation, it's a list. I'm recommending you a set of items. Some of it is from your interest. Some of it are some discovery, some random explorations. And then I give you this buffet, right? And usually buffet is a nicer option. Why? Because you have options as a user. Now this buffet is very important because if you go to a restaurant, I don't know what you would like, right? I mean, I'll give you a buffet, some vegetarian, some non-vegetarian options, and some Chinese, some Asian cuisine, some Mexican cuisine, and all that. So then if you don't know what the user wants, the user has a few choices and they can pick one. So that's why this presenting a diverse set of selection to the user is important, right? So when you look at Kindle, maybe I'll recommend you 6 books from your topics, 2 books from some discovery, and also 2 books from users like you also like some other content. So this is called collaborative filtering, that you as a user might be interested in C1, C2, but similar users are also interested in category C3. So then I'll pick something from C3 and start showing. So this is, in personalization, we call it diversification. Can I diversify the options I show to you? I'll do some exploitation, show 6 of the already existing categories, and then pick a couple of them randomly or a couple of them with some collaborative filtering approach, and then get a set of 10 together in front of you. And this gives you a choice, right? That, oh, I want to consume C1, C2, great, I'll consume that. Or no, I want something else. So there is like 30-40% of content from something else as well. So that's how we can start doing the second part of what you mentioned, that how do we break the filter bubble? How do we inject some surprise to you? And we could keep on changing that, right? One last point over here would be, I want to be very intentional about what explorations I do for you. Because as a platform, I might want to nudge you towards certain categories more than the others, right? I mean, it may be that if I'm Netflix, right? So Netflix has this Netflix originals content, right? And I mean, again, Netflix as a platform pays less money because like, I mean, if I show you a Disney movie on Netflix, I'm going to have to pay Disney a lot of money because you're streaming Disney movies here, right? But Netflix has these Netflix originals. Amazon has Amazon Prime originals, right? I mean, Spotify has Spotify exclusive podcasts. So if you look at it, each of these companies have some strategic deals. Either they have their own content. Amazon has Amazon Basics, right? So again, there is a competition. On Amazon, I can show you my own Amazon Basics product, or I can show you a very similar product from my competitor. So this is the very important tension, which I think this is regulated, at least in the US, that, hey, you cannot kill competition on your platform. Because if you start only showing Amazon Basics products, then all the other retailers are suffering. Why? Because you own the monopoly, you own the systems, and then the others are suffering because I'm not Amazon. So I think like this is why like some regulations are already there in some of the markets, at other places maybe not. But as a platform, you have a strategic content. So I, as a user, I will prefer that, hey, you stream a Netflix original movie than a very similar movie, which I have to pay money to Disney for, right? So why would I do that? So essentially, like this is when like the platform interest, the user interest, and the supply interest starts competing with each other. And that's where things get very interesting. That how do I balance it? Because if I start only showing my Amazon Basics, then all my retailers are going to go to Flipkart. Why? Because, hey, I mean, this guy is like very bad. I mean, they're only showing their content and I'm not getting any exposure. So I'll have a deal with Flipkart. OnePlus, right? I mean, OnePlus had an exclusive deal. It's not on each of the platform. They have an exclusive deal. If you look at Swiggy might be signing some deals. I don't know if they are or not, but at least as a user, I can imagine that I get different, at least in the UK, in London for me, I mean, we have Deliveroo and we have Uber Eats. And there are certain restaurants who say that I'm exclusively on Deliveroo. I'm not on Uber Eats.
Okay.
So if you have this exclusivity, right, then like Spotify does the same. Like Joe Rogan podcast is exclusively on Spotify. It's not on Apple Music. It's not on YouTube. So more and more creators are getting exclusive deals from the platform. So now platform has an interest of showing them. How does it link it to the user? Now you as a user, you're not opinionated. Hey, I just want to buy something. I don't care if it's Amazon Basics or not. There I have a choice as a platform. That, oh, this user is unopinionated, fine. Let me show some strategic content which is of high revenue for me as a platform. And you don't mind it, right? Because you're like, hey, I mean, it's fine. I mean, A versus B, I don't care. I just want something. And I'll rather get you A because A is strategically important as a platform. So this is the nuances which are happening in most of these systems now, that they have some strategic content on the platform. So the amount of discovery I want you to do in one category, I'm influencing that, not just based on you, but based on what's beneficial for the platform economy itself. And I think let's not kid ourselves, right? I mean, these platforms are not nonprofit companies. They have to exist. They have to earn revenue. And I'll rather have that these companies keep on earning revenue because I like the service. I mean, I love Swiggy. I mean, during my pandemic, my family, everybody relied so heavily on Swiggy. So I want Swiggy to make money and take money from me, take money from the customers, be profitable. Yes, love it. So if the systems are doing the right balancing, I think then it's a win-win-win for everybody. But this is a very hard problem, right? It's often not a win-win-win. Somebody loses, somebody wins, right? So this is where like things start getting really nasty and really interesting. And all of this is like machine learning models doing the matching and balancing. So I'm just talking in English, but these are all like mathematical multi-objective models playing out across millions of users and millions of creators.
Got it. I mean, the whole multi-market or multi-user aspect is quite interesting. I mean, we are used to looking at it in a linear way where it was always about the shopper experience. That's
Right.
it. And I mean, while platforms like, Spotify, Netflix, Amazon have, really pushed the boundaries, what we have observed is a lot of retail businesses, or for that matter, even B2B e-commerce businesses, they are still, you may say, just starting with the basic recommendation.
Right.
And while all of this, and everybody is practically an Amazon or a Netflix or a Spotify user to some extent, and while they have been experiencing all those things,
right,
when it comes to implementing within their own business, there are too many things which come to their mind. So what are the various ways a small business specifically, because bigger businesses have the manpower, the resources, the money to get all those things done. What are the various ways a small business can get started with this and actually start reaping its benefit in a limited amount which they have, or the capital which they have? That's one of the things which actually pops up in my mind. How can it get started with this?
Yes, I think like I'll kind of ask a follow-back question and then I can pick up the answer. I mean, the question then becomes that, is a small business running a shop of its own online, or is it plugged into one of these like bigger e-commerce platforms which can provide something for you, right? And I think the scenario in both the cases will be different. So what I can do is going to be different for both. So what are we more interested in right now?
So majority of these businesses typically have their own online store.
Right.
But for them, Amazon or Flipkart or Alibaba, for that matter, becomes an interesting channel which powers their store, where products are pushed from here to there, and it becomes an interesting channel. So it works for both ways for them.
Right. Yeah, I think that's interesting because, like, I mean, you have a mix, right? You have your own website wherein people come in, you get some % of traffic here, and then you kind of put it on Amazon, put it on Alibaba, and you're kind of getting some traffic there, right? I think like it's of course more interesting and you have more control over your website and the conversions there, because like you have more control, you have a direct connect with customers. On the other side, there is slightly less of control, right? I think like there are different policies which get enacted in both these scenarios. I'll start with this, right? If you have your own store, then of course you won't have the bandwidth to employ like a 10-person machine learning team, right? I mean, you'll maybe have 1 or 2 data persons and then start kind of building out some sort of like personalization services for you. So one of the easy things to do is just be more real-time adaptive. What I mean by that is like Mother's Day is going on, let's say, right? And then there are gifts about Mother's Day. So maybe just have a simple process wherein you collect data on what's externally happening. Like Navratri is going on, so it might influence what kind of products people buy, right? Restaurants providers definitely do that. I mean, like they start putting up these Falhari meals just around these times, right? So when certain events are happening, then you want to be more responsive. You want to have a system wherein I can just prioritize some of these products over others on the homepage. You come to my homepage, you're going to start seeing some of these more products. They're not personalized to each user. They are personalized to maybe groups of users. Maybe there's in Delhi, there's some other events going on. In Maharashtra, there's something else going on. So maybe you can do some aggregate personalization. So even if you don't do aggregate personalization, maybe you can just be globally trend aware. That I'll have a process wherein I just look a raw count of what kind of purchases, what kind of people are searching, right? I mean, maybe they don't get something, so they search for a product. And if a lot of people are searching for that product, maybe I can get them that product surface on my homepage at the top. So if you have a system, it could just be Excel sheets. You just dump the data on what kind of people are searching, what's happening in the last 2-3 days. And then you can maybe sort by popularity and start showing some of that, right? So what you've done is instead of a static offering, you have a slight personalized offering in terms of recent trends. It's still not personalized for the user. but it's personalized based on what's happening on the platform and what people are needing right now. Then maybe you can start having some indicator that where is the user coming in from. If the user has logged in, you have some information like what's their age, what's their gender. You start looking at some personalization over there. So I think like you can go a lot far by not being static on your website and start being dynamic, right? And I think it's easy just to have a 1 or 2 data person team, and they can crunch some of these numbers for you, and just pure statistics, no machine learning involved, just pure stats, pure averaging, pure popularity counts. And maybe you can start doing that by regions, or start doing that by, day of the week, time of the day, and so on, right? So that might get you far enough in terms of offerings. If I go to the other extent, that hey, I'm also getting enough traffic from Amazon and from Alibaba, then maybe can I have a subscription model with the users that, hey, I can offer like bundle pricing, maybe that, hey, if you buy this, you price X, you buy that separate, it's X plus Y. But then together, I'm going to give you a 20% discount on X plus Y, right? So I think like what you can do is you can have some, again, the data person you have, you can ask them to make some projections that how much more requests will I get if I start giving X amount of discount here. So then you can expose some of these deals on your Amazon page that, hey, if you buy this, you're going to get an offer for this much. The question then becomes, how much of an offer do you want to give? And that's where some of these, again, it need not be a fancy machine learning model, some basic stats on, if I give this discount, I expect these many new orders to arrive. So my net profit will increase by this much. And I'm okay with like a 5% drop in the net profit because now I'm getting a lot more orders. My volume has increased, right? So that could give you a way to price your bundles as well, or price your subscription. Like if I go to Amazon, I have these for all the utilities at my home. I have a subscription that every 1 month, every 3 months, Amazon sends me this and I get a 5%, 10% off. So I'm kind of resorting to these subscription offers from these companies, right? So there are ways in which you can start doing some of that on the other platforms of your own. So I think there's a lot of ways in which you can make better decisions, but there's an underlying assumption in all of this that you keep a log of what's happening. So this is what people often do. They've been in the business for like 5 years. They just don't keep a log of, hey, what's happening? What the user started typing some query, they never got a product, they went away. So that's abandonment. That's a failed conversion, right? So if you're not logging the right data, then like God help you, right? You don't have any data points which you can use. The reason why some of these like Google search is so amazing is because millions and millions of users have been using Google search for like 20 years now, right? So it has so much behavior data that it's a data advantage. On Spotify, like we have people creating playlists on Spotify for 15, 20 years now. Close to 16 years now, right? So again, like humans are putting their brains into organizing musical tracks into playlist, right? There's a devotion playlist, there's a Diwali playlist, there's a running playlist, there's like all out 80s, about 80 songs, there's like some other playlist. And human brain is put into creating this playlist, right? So the data advantage which some of these companies have is amazing. It's almost insurmountable, right? I might have all the information of music, but then I don't have like 100 million users creating these playlists over 10 years time, right? So what's my point? My point is that if you have a platform, make sure that you're logging all of these behaviors on your platform. So that even if you hire a data scientist or a data engineer 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, then they have access to this rich data, which they can use for you. The other option is, I think there's a lot of like personalization services, which you can they provide easy plugin options. And I think like you guys would be aware of a lot of these in India, and which can directly plug in, give them your data, and then they'll kind of do some personalization for you, right? So I think there's a few options around that, but it's critical to keep on collecting the data and keep on looking at where the conversion fails, where does abandonment happen. User typed in a query, they never found a product. Maybe the product was there, you're just not matching it well, you're not showing it well, right? So looking at all those failure cases is kind of critically important. So logging data is like, yeah, the ultimate thing which we anyway should be doing.
Yeah, so you mentioned it right. So in our experience, we have offered both set of offerings to our customers, where if it's a standardized process where they need product recommendations, personalized recommendations plugged in their online store, we have our ewiz platform which does that. You simply have to integrate, pull the data, right, and it offers on the go with, then you can offer those recommendations on the basis of event, location, upcoming seasons, right, and other user interests. In cases where the requirement is completely ad hoc, for example, one of our customers wanted basis the image, if you upload a set of dump of images for the products, the platform should be able to identify the good ones along with where you have object, copyrighted issues. For example, if you upload a bag which has Louis Vuitton logo on it,
Right.
you shouldn't upload it on the platform because then it's a copyright violation.
Yes.
So all these where we develop all those things customized. That took time. Like you rightly said, we had to employ a data scientist, they had to study, they had to identify the processes and then train the data at our end and then start using it. So we face data being a major issue, and a lot of, especially small business, which you rightly said, data, even though it's available, first of all, we have seen that availability itself is a problem beyond what they have in their order management system. They have nothing else. Then if they have it, it's not structured. It's not, you can't consume it directly. So how do you deal with these things of these kind of problems? Because this is critical to everything that you do, right?
Right. Yeah, I think this is where, like, I mean, like data logging and logging the right data and like sanity checking, right? I mean, maybe you're logging data, but then like what actually happened on the website and what you're logging is way too off, right? So then like you're living in like two separate worlds. And this is often a problem which I keep seeing a lot of companies make. I mean, they have a stellar machine learning team, but like the log data is different than the actual stuff which happened. So you're training a model on incorrect data, right? And then you're expecting, hey, why is the model not working? So I mean, making sure that like this is what happens, right? I mean, you're training a model based on, let's say, some your data is on some SQL, some BigQuery on Google, whatever, and you're kind of training a model there. But now in inference, when you try to make user comes to the website, you try to query this model. Now you're going to get some features, right? Okay, like I have to query this model, I need these many features. So the feature calculation you do, that is on a different system, and the data you've logged is on a different system. And these systems are very different than each other. And nobody's keeping a check that, hey, am I logging the correct values, or I mean, sometimes people don't even log, right? I'm making a prediction, I never log the features I used when I was making this prediction. So what happens is like model drift starts happening. That drift is that the model which is trained was on very old data, and that's nowhere close to the data I'm using to query the model now. So all the predictions I'm getting are like absolutely crap. So, and then you start observing, oh, there's a dip in user retention, there's a dip in successful engagement and all, and you don't know why that's happening. So this is why, right? I mean, you talk about the unstructured data storage. People underestimate the value of a clean data and making sure that you have proper monitoring in place. So I think a lot of these like companies are starting to have these monitoring dashboards that what's the distribution of each of these features in my log data and in my production environment. So that, I mean, I can make sure that things are not drastically different across the two. So do I have the regular monitoring checks around such data issues, right? And again, at Spotify, we spend close to a year in making sure that all the logging, to the extent that if for a playlist 1 or 2 pixels were shown, then how long were they shown on the app for? And did the user see enough of that pixel? Because we want to make an inference that I showed you this, you did not consume this music, you moved on, right? So to that, I have to understand that, did you see it enough, or did you just see maybe the top bar of the playlist and you did not see it enough, right? So if you're not logging how much percentage of the pixels were visible on the screen, then your data will look like the user saw this playlist. But in reality, I just saw like 10% of the top and I don't know what the playlist is about. So I think logging that data in the correct fashion is critically important. One of the ways in which, coming back to the core question you asked, right? I mean, we have a lot of unstructured data. So I think this is where like we do a lot of work on metadata tagging, identifying, I mean, customers are uploading, like, I mean, if I have this like water bottle, right? I mean, like, hey, I mean, it has a tag, it has this, so it has some numbers over here. So often the retailer may not provide you with all this information. So then can I develop a computer vision model which can say that, okay, this is the properties of it, approximately this is the height and length of this water bottle, and these are some of the attributes, right? So how I can do some image processing, some content understanding, how I can, maybe then I can also query like similar products on Google search or on Amazon and see what kind of attributes do we have there, especially on e-commerce, right? I mean, when I want to buy a phone, when I want to buy some of these things, I want a sense of size. I want these aspects to be quantified. So when you're listing a product, if you're not quantifying those aspects, then I as a user don't know. I'll have to look at the image, maybe look at, oh, is it there, is it that? And if you're putting it on a table, then I want some relative size comparisons. So again, like you can avoid a lot of user fatigue by giving them this right information in the right structure. So that's why, right? I mean, if you look at Walmart, one of my friends used to work at Walmart in the metadata tagging team, and they have a big team which is just extracting all the right dimensions for each of these products. And the dimensions are very different. For mobile, it's about the size, about the screen length, about the memory. But for a laptop, it's completely different. For a table, it's completely different. So the dimensions on which your data should be presented, they're all different across categories. So this is why, right? I mean, I think this is where I've seen a lot of companies develop this ontology, that you have these topics, you have these categories, inside these categories, you have these classes of products. And then for each of them, you have some of these like aspects which you want quantified. Now, often what happens if you go to Amazon, then people ask questions that, hey, what's the, how much battery is needed, how much that is needed, right? So you can do a lot of mining from the reviews. That often in reviews, people write that, oh, this is amazing, it fit well in my bag, it was this much size, it's like 1 liter bottle. So maybe you're not specifying the size of the bottle and all that, but then in the reviews, people have highlighted that, or maybe somebody has asked a question. So that's a rich unstructured data you can use to extract that, oh, a lot of people are asking questions about this dimension. Maybe for this category, I should go back and add this dimension, right? And one of the important points which I've realized in the last 1 year is that it's not just ML models, it's the ops, like the operations people you have who are combing through this data, who are looking at, I mean, often companies have a category manager for each of these categories. How are we doing there? What are we missing there, right? And those ops people can start looking at all this data, what kind of data we have, what kind of comments people are writing in reviews, and then they can come back. So this is the human in the loop machine learning, right? That we should have these ops people who are plugged into the right systems and they can put the right information for the machine learning systems to consume. And this is not just e-commerce, like on ShareChat, on mods, we have a lot of account managers talking with the creators and kind of hand-holding the creators to success. Same for categories here. I mean, same for Spotify. Like we employ a lot of expert editors. Like Marathi music experts are very different than like some Punjabi music experts, right? So the music editors for the local market, they know about that content. So that's why, like on e-commerce platforms, category managers, the ops people play such a huge role. And often what happens is the data scientists just conveniently ignore that, oh, there is so much domain information for these in these humans, we are not just using them wisely. So this is where the intersection of leveraging the ops people and then having a bridge between the machine learning and data with the ops, so that you can have a feedback loop. They can provide you that, hey, this is what the model is not picking up on. And the machine learning people can ask that, hey, can you get some feedback data for this? And I can train a model on that quickly. So I think like making sure that the ops people have a bridge with the data science team, right? I mean, that's also becomes critically important.
Yeah. So like you rightly said, the sorting the data and uploading the right set of data, I don't know if there's an automated process for that, but definitely, a lot of, this curation would still be manual.
Yes.
Even if you automate some amount of it, it would need
Right.
one round of,
Right.
human intervention on it.
Yes. And I think the curation, one thing is the curation is costly, right? So I'll rather have the curation target the most useful information. So there's an area in machine learning called active learning, that if you have these 100 images, not all of them are most useful. So can I select 10 most useful and then get the humans to annotate those 10 images only, right? Any random 10 is not as useful. So the model can make a prediction that, hey, I'm very uncertain about these. So you can use in a very efficient manner, you can use a human input. So they don't have to look at everything, but we can design a process where an active learning models can tell that, hey, I'm very uncertain in this area. If you're getting a label, then get the label for this data. That's most informative to me. So I think none of us have like infinite budget for data labeling, right? And we spend like lakhs even on ShareChat labeling data, but then like that's very intelligently processed. That if I ask you one question, then what's the most important question I can ask you? I won't waste your time in asking like 5 stupid questions, which I don't gain anything from, right? So you can put a lot of intelligence around the data labeling efforts as well.
So I am sure now that you mentioned that people spend lakhs and millions of dollars on the data labeling. One of the most frequent question, and that is across any category or any industry, is how soon can we start seeing the ROI on this one? We implemented the product recommendations. Is it helping me contribute to my revenue? Are people actually exploring these products? So how soon is the first question, and can I see it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you must have come across it. So yeah, I mean, for us, we have started building a couple of dashboards on the back end where we track people who click on those recommendations and then track their whole journey, whether they clicked on it, from what section did they click on it, because you have multiple
Right.
recommendation section on the platform. Then did you just click on it? Did you add to cart? Did you add to wish list? Or did you actually made the purchase?
Right.
So that's one way we started doing it, because that's the simplest way you could think of. Are there any other ways where you could predict certain things, like this, because of this data we see that this product has a certain would have a certain demand maybe 2 months down the line, so budget for it.
Yes, I think like you're touching upon like very, very interesting and very like nuanced and non-trivial problems here. Like one of the things is like, can I make a counterfactual estimation? So maybe you would have gotten these products purchases even without me doing any of that. So can I answer this counterfactual question that if I don't show this recommendation, if I don't do this, then what would have happened otherwise? And now because I'm doing it, this is the delta you're seeing. So this causal attribution that this is happening because like causally, it's a causal link, that it's not a correlation that is just happening. It's like, because I made this change, then this is exactly how the delta is attributed back to me. So I think this causal attribution is an important problem. And we've done a lot of research recent years around like, how do we causally attribute this? One of the simple ways to start with are just A/B testing, right? That you have a user segment, you divide it into control and treatment. For control, you don't make the change. For treatment, you make the change, and then see, okay, there's a delta. The purchase rate for my treatment is 2% more than the purchase rate for my control. And that I can take a attribution, right? Because the only difference between control and treatment is this delta change. I have 100 users, 50 users see control, which is variant A, 50 users see treatment, which is variant B. The only difference between A and B is this minor change which I made. And now this is giving me a delta jump in some of these conversions, some of these click-through. So now I can like maybe correlate it back to, hey, this is the attribution that this is happening because of this. Now, again, for a lot of these things, we can do these A/B tests. For a lot of these things, we cannot do an A/B test because it's not always clean to divide users into segments. And again, if you're Amazon, right, I cannot stop one product from being shown to you. So if I'm trying out a new difference across some of my sellers, then it's not very easy to A/B test. So now what we're doing is we're starting to have this counterfactual prediction. I mean, I think this is where a lot of work has been happening in the healthcare domain, like causal inference in healthcare. They're saying that if I give you this treatment right now, then what would have been your outlook for the disease progression? And if I don't give it, then this is what would have happened. Or if I give you drug 2, then this is what happens. So I cannot give you both the drugs as a user, right? I can only maybe randomize. Some users get this, some users get that. And then I can estimate from that. So there is a lot of like this counterfactual estimation as a problem. So there's a lot of like stats and time series modeling involved there, which says that, hey, this is a trend which would have happened over a period of time. And now I can say that because of my intervention is you making that change. Because of my intervention, now this is the other time series, and you can look at the delta. Now there's a lot of seasonal effects, like maybe like it's just Independence Day is coming up and people are buying more of these anyway. So how do you account for that and don't take credit for that, right? I mean, maybe like people already start purchasing 20% more, and your model gives you plus 25%. So you shouldn't take credit for that plus 25%. Instead, take it for plus 5%. Or maybe there's a general trend. I mean, recession coming in, people are spending less. So you start seeing a dip anyway, right? So how do you account for these things? So if you look at like, there are a lot of libraries like Profit from Facebook, a machine learning group. It's a library which does this time series forecasting. And a lot of work has gone into how do you account for some seasonal effect? How do you account for some general variations in these time series? And then can you attribute the delta back to your change? So my broad answer is like a lot of A/B testing, counterfactual estimation is another tool. And then looking at time series predictions is like a third option, which people usually have to make these estimates. And like A/B testing is a way, way big topic. I think like, I mean, that deserves a discussion of its own, because like developing the right metrics, are you even measuring the right conversions? Are you measuring the right metrics with the right rigor? And when you look at the difference between A versus B, right? 50 users got A, 50 users got B, then are you just looking at the mean? Like that, oh, the average conversion here was 0.45, average conversion here is 0.52. Is it just 0.05 difference? Do you have confidence intervals on each of these, right? Maybe the means are overlapping, but the confidence intervals are like almost the same. So then it's not a statistically significant difference. So this is where a lot of like stats rigor starts coming in, that you do these two-tailed tests that this number is statistically significant, that other number and then make some conclusions. So there's no area of measurement sciences around this, which is going heavy on stats, on metrics, on experimentation.
So one of the, I mean, and we have a couple of more questions for you. So if you had to elaborate one particular instance or maybe a case study where you see immense impact on, and you already spoke about Spotify or ShareChat, maybe you can use the same again.
Right.
What kind of impact did you see in terms of the user engagement, maybe conversion, or maybe time spent on the platform, whatever the metrics you were targeting for? So if you can elaborate on one of those, it would help us understand.
Yes, I'll give you a couple of examples, one from Spotify, one from ShareChat, because I love both, right? So essentially from Spotify, one of the projects which we led was, can I show this? So on Spotify, you can look at some playlist, you can start a radio session, and then you go on and we start recommending music to you. So in those playlists, in those radio sessions, what we were not doing is we were not balancing the right familiarity with discovery. So users were, I mean, if you like a song, right? I mean, there's a Taylor Swift song, you start a radio on that. And now it only shows you songs related to that. But what it missed out was that, are you familiar with this music? Are you familiar with this genre? Or are we only showing you familiar content, or are we not showing you any discovery content? So what used to happen was that either the model goes into full familiarity mode, that I'm going to keep showing you content which you already know, or it goes into the other extreme, that, oh, it's a lot of content which you haven't seen. But if you look at it, then users have a propensity for discovery. Some users love familiarity more, some users don't love it more. Some users love discovery more, some users don't love it more. So what we did was we made a user level prediction that for this user, how much do you value familiarity? How much do you value discovery? Now you can make a prediction about each user, that you as a user would love it, some users don't love it. So it's a spectrum from 0 to 1. Like users at 1 love discovery, users at 1 love familiarity. So what we did was we balanced familiarity and discovery for each user based on this prediction. And what we did was, like, for this user, I know that this user loved discovery, but this playlist or this set is not about discovery too much. So then there's an interplay that maybe the playlist you're listening is very, like, if you're looking at like top hits in India in May, right? So then, I mean, these are top hits, right? I mean, a lot of people would have heard it. So there's not much scope for discovery over here. But if you're looking at like all out 80s, like best music from the 1980s, then there is a lot of like discovery element to that, because you're a 1990s kid, or you're like, you just born like 15 years ago, you didn't hear like 80s music, right? So then there's a lot more scope for exploring more discovery recommendations there. Let's bring it all together. So now I know that depending on the playlist, I can do more or less discovery. Depending on the user, I can do more or less discovery. Up until now, I was not considering any of that. So now when we brought in that nuance that, hey, look at the playlist. Where is the user? What's the appetite for discovery there? Look at the user. What's their appetite for discovery? Combine it all together, have the machine learning model predict how much discovery, how much should we be mixing these objectives, and then release it out. So then we saw huge gains. We saw like close to like 7% short-term gains. We saw like close to 9% return rate, 7-day return rate for the user. The users kept coming back to my playlist a lot more. The overall time spent increased. And it's not just user increase. We also increased the creator metrics, like the artist metrics, because I can now, because of discovery, right? You love discovery, I'm showing more discovery to you. So then that means like the user artist connection was increasing. That artists prefer that. Right? Some artists are like, hey, grow me my audience. That like, I want like to be exposed to new audiences. Some artists are like, no, I don't want new audience. Give me 100 fans who will buy my merchandise. So different creators, different artists have different goals. Some artists want bigger audience. Some artists are like, no, I don't want bigger audience. Give me hardcore fans. So we were able to kind of influence these artist metrics in the way as well. So again, we saw gains in user engagement. We saw gains in user coming back to my platform to consume the playlist in 7 days. We also saw a lot of like artist specific gains. Why did we get it? Because we were leaving money on the table. We did not take into account the set, the playlist nuances. We did not take into account the user prediction. And this is also an important point to make, that your recommendation model is making the decision, but it's supported by many, many ML models. Because to make this happen, I made a prediction about the user, that what's the user propensity for discovery. That's a separate ML model altogether, right? And then you can make that prediction and make it available. Any team at Spotify can start consuming it. Any team at ShareChat can start consuming it. So often what happens is you make these predictions about user, you make it available, and then another team starts using that prediction to inform their decision. So there's a lot of decoupling here. It's not just one big ML model making everything. There's a lot of ML models which are individually, right? Democratically, they're innovating. Somebody's making a prediction about user coming back. Somebody's making a prediction about user getting like churning on the platform. So you have these predictions and then you start using them for your policy. So that's the Spotify case. One quick example, we did something recently on ShareChat was we were trying to identify, are you liking the video? Are you liking the images or videos or not? So dwell time is an important trait. So usually what people do is like, hey, if you looked at the image for 3 seconds, I think you liked it. Usually what happens is like this 3-second threshold is absolutely not global, because if you look at some of these like content on ShareChat, like people write these shairi poems, right? So it has a lot of text. So it'll take you time to understand that text. So maybe you'll spend like 3-4 seconds reading the poem and then you're like, I didn't like it. So 4 seconds is not success, right? Why? It took you 4 seconds to understand what the content is. But maybe if it's a cute puppy image or a video, then in 1 second, you'll know it is good. So then the global threshold that, hey, if users look at my image for 3 seconds, that's good. Below 3 seconds, that's bad. That doesn't work anymore. Like some devotion images have a lot of gods, and some other shairi has a lot of content, a lot of text. So can I understand that image? So this is metadata understanding. That can I understand the quality of the image? Can I understand like how much information is in the image? And then I can use that to decide like what my model should pick. That is it good? Is it bad? And then we deployed that, and then like we got some amazing wins there. So the point is, the more you understand about the user, like the user propensity for discovery, the more you understand about content, that does this content have text? Is it too much, too hard, too less? How much complexity is in the content? And if you use that in order to design a better recommendation policy, you do get the gains. So it's not just about understanding better users, it's also understanding better content and also changing the policy, that I know something about the user. I'm now changing my decision based on that new information. So all of it together gave us a lot of like amazing product wins.
I'd like to add to the case studies that you have described now. There was one more point, that these are large enterprises, these are large players. So they have budget, they have the timelines, and they can afford those time to give to these machine learning models to develop and provide the results. When we talk about the small players, so they have limited budgets, they have limited resources as well. So when they are adopting such personalization, solutions related to personalization, they will be labeling it with some kind of a timeline. So they want results in particular timeline, and that will be dependent on multiple factors. Like data can be one of the factors. Like how good the data is, it will decide how much time it will take. So like how you will like answer that part of the query, like how to decide the timeline to provide the results.
Right. I think that's a great point. I think machine learning is normal software engineering deterministic. You spend 2 days, you'll make a change and it'll work. Right. I mean, in machine learning, there's no determinism. It's a very stochastic world that I don't know. I mean, maybe it will work, maybe it won't work. Maybe there's money on the table, there's no money on the table. I'm just spending time uselessly. So usually machine learning projects are a lot more harder to estimate timelines around. And that's why, like, if you're a product manager working in machine learning, I mean, like, God bless you, you have a very hard job, right? Because it's not, you can't have OKRs that in a week, in a month, I'll do this, things can work out, things may not work out. One of the things which I loved doing during my time at Spotify and continuing to do that here at ShareChat is, can I get some evidence before I develop a model, right? Can I get some data analysis, quick data analysis, like spend a couple of hours and then see, like, is there a change here? Like maybe what we did for the dwell time, right? I looked at some content, we manually tagged, like we manually picked up 100 images, which had a lot of like text in the image, and 100 which it didn't have. And then look at what's the dwell time for that. So just 200 images, right? 100 from there, 100 from there, look at the average dwell time on each of them. And that shows clear differences, right? So the data analysis need not be on 100 million users, 10 million items, right? It could be just that if you know that if I ask the right data question from my limited data, maybe I can extrapolate that, hey, there is something here. So it's not a futile exercise. So the more I can guarantee from data analysis that I understand the problem domain and I know there's something here, so it's worth it. So this is what I keep asking my team as well, that let's kind of come back with a foolproof, at least some sort of surety that like the data is suggesting that, yes, there's a lot of money on the table here and this is worth going after. Because usually what happens is a lot of machine learning engineers, they look at fancy ML models and they throw math at the problem that, okay, I don't spend time understanding a problem domain. I just kind of keep on putting model after model, nothing happens. So this is why, right? If you're an ML engineer, then it makes sense to understand the problem domain, do some data analysis, and then maybe use some of these. The one other thing is, I think it's very important for us to know what's available. Like for this image understanding, OCR text is already available. I mean, like there are ML models, like at least the machine learning community is very, very open around these large language models, these large image understanding models, ResNet models. All of these models are available. And even some of these you can train on your browser on JavaScript with no code tools. So I think like, I mean, especially like, I mean, platforms like yours, you do provide some of those options to your customers that, hey, I mean, there's these available and I can provide that interface for you to use them. So I think just being open and aware of what kind of libraries and tools are freely available. What has happened is a lot of these companies have created these large models like ResNet models and other YOLO models, which are huge neural networks trained on billions of images, and they are available. So I can just use that model. If I know how to write Python script, I can query, use that model, pass in an image and get that, okay, what's the OCR text or what's about this image? So if I am aware of what kind of models do we have, or if I'm talking with you guys, right, and you guys are aware of model we have, then I can get it almost for free. I'll have to do some minimum work. I don't have to train a fancy neural model, but then like you guys have done it for me. You can use some of these libraries and then do that for us, right? So I think there are these ways in which you don't have to spend a lot of time, but then you can use pre-trained models, which are made available by these big companies, and then use that to your advantage. Oh, I think you're muted. Deepak, you're muted, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that makes sense. Before jumping into it, you need to ask the right questions. Does it even make sense to explore this here?
Right.
Just using tech for the sake of it isn't really going to help anyone. Officially out of questions. One final thing which Devesh brought to my notice is about you talk about something, digital experiences for the next billion internet users. What is that about?
Yes, so I think like that's one of the core pieces which got me excited about the ShareChat opportunity as well. So I think what has happened is, like, if you look at the internet users right now or over the last 10 years, so these have been users who have been in the tech industry or very tech savvy, right? I mean, especially like tier 1 audiences, tier 1 cities, audiences from that. What's happening over the last few years is that, I mean, again, as more and more internet penetration is happening in India and across the world, then a lot more new users from tier 2, tier 3 cities, from villages are getting access to that mobile. The mobile data plans in India are like one of the cheapest across the world. You have high speed internet. I mean, our company wouldn't exist had it not been for the vast scale of internet, cheap internet available in India, right? So some of these infrastructure changes have a huge impact on the kind of talent, on the kind of companies, on the kind of products getting developed in different countries, right? So India went through this massive internet revolution wherein like the data costs are one of the cheapest across the world. The speeds are pretty fast. Otherwise, like who's going to stream a 30-second video when it takes like half an hour to stream that, right? So what is happening now is that as internet is expanding its reaches out to the villages in tier 3, tier 4 cities, a lot more people are coming online. Now, the behaviors and expectations from those users are very different than the behavior of tier 1 city users. So these users, like in tier 1, they grew up using Facebook, using Instagram, and I mean, even the language, right? I mean, the content which I consume is mostly in English, but the content my family, my parents, or my like other friends, they consume, they may not be in English, right? I mean, do we have enough? I mean, Facebook is not spending time understanding the recommendations in like Marathi, in Hindi, in Telugu, in Tamil, right? And it's a very hard problem because it's hard enough to create one recommendation system. It's a lot harder to create 15 recommendation systems, one for Tamil, one for Telugu, one for Marathi, one for Hindi, right? And it's not just recommendation, you have to source content. So the Telugu creators of content are very different than the Hindi creators, than the Tamil creators, than the Punjabi creators. So their interest profiles are different. The kind of content they create is different. Their expectations are different. Their behaviors are different. You have a lot of like localness around user needs, around user trends, right? So this is why it's very important and it's very hard. It's very important to develop tools which the next billion internet users coming onto the platform are using, because again, like a small cross of an ad on YouTube, that's too much for somebody in the village who's just using the app, right? I mean, the interface is not built for them. So that's why it's very hard and important for us and these companies to keep in mind that, look, the next 500 million to billion users coming in the next 5-6 years on to the platform are going to be these users. So we are going to have to understand user nuances. I've spent like close to 10 years now working on recommendations and search systems, understanding users. The set of users I spend time understanding, these are very different than the next set of internet users coming onto the platform. So the expectations and needs are way different. So that's a challenge which I wanted to embark on as well. Like one of the reasons why I moved to ShareChat is that, look, we want to be very inclusive, right? We want not just to create internet for the users who are already there, but then we want an inclusive world wherein my model is fair, it's able to understand the user needs and serve the user needs for the entire society. So that means companies like ShareChat, companies like who are spending a lot of time developing multilingual models, developing regional content, sourcing regional content, having ops people in those regions, right? That if you're a Marathi creator, you have a dedicated person. I mean, Spotify has these regional editors, like Marathi music editor is very different than a Hindi music editor, right? So this is why it's very important to understand the user needs and develop the right models and the right interfaces so that those people can be served as well. So again, as a leader in the machine learning in the data world, I mean, like it's far important for us to realize that we have to be very inclusive of the entire society. And this is also what I was saying, right? Initially, half an hour ago, I made this point that we should be inclusive, not just about the user, but the delivery partners, the restaurants, right? So I think one of the last points I want to make is that these systems are impacting the entire society at this scale. Like I'm spending close to 10 hours watching a screen, right? Either for work or for entertainment, whatever. The amount of money I'm making is dependent on internet. The amount of money people, Uber delivery partners are making are depending on the internet. And these models are powering this, right? So the economic impact these models are having on the society is huge. And that's why it's very important for us to be very mindful of how we are designing the system. If I'm only designing it for a certain segment of users, like tier 1 city users, then it's not good. I'm missing out on all the other tier 2, tier 3 users, right? If I'm only designing for the users and not for my retailers, not for my restaurants, delivery partners, then it's not a good thing. So this is why, right? I mean, the entire pitch and the entire effort of my work in the last few years and going forward is how can we design more inclusive systems for the creators, for the other stakeholders, for the different segment of users, and do justice and serve their information needs. So really personalization down to the last niche user, personalization down to the niche category, down to the last suppliers, right? So personalizing in the tail is what we are after. Personalizing for the head is easy. You have a lot of data there. Personalizing for the tail creators, for the tail users, that's where a lot of the next magic will come from.
Yeah, now I get the sense of the next set of billion users. You're right. I mean, while for us using any of those apps are like, we do that in and out.
Right.
We don't need to train, the tier 1 people on using those apps. It just comes natural to us, and maybe
Right.
the kids nowadays.
Right.
But yes, as and when different forms of content, when people would explore those videos or those shairis on apps like ShareChat, they come with a different set of point of view,
Right.
and they would share this further.
Right. Yes.
So it has to be relevant to them in order for them to share, and
yes.
plus the interface has to be easier for them to share. You
Right.
can't
Yes.
expect them to copy or maybe figure out the share options the way we do. It has to be
Right.
something which they can do without
Yes.
any kind of training. So yeah.
And I think like this is like, it's not just a feel good thing, right? I mean, it has a lot of economic implications for platforms. Like recently ShareChat, one of the teams internally released a Bharat report that the economic incentives for getting personalized services there is huge. Because I mean, it's a myth that we have that only tier 1 cities people buy a lot of products online. I mean, most of these companies are starting to monetize heavily the tier 2, tier 3 cities customer base as well. And I think again, apps like ShareChat are one of the first apps that they start using, right? So if we can get a lot more exposure of e-commerce to them, of like way of transacting on the internet to them, then there's a huge economic potential here. So I think like we will be kidding ourselves if we think that, hey, we are just doing it for the social good. There's a lot of economic value to be unpacked by going after the economic needs of people in like other cities, in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, and then kind of doing better, because you're going to earn like more profits as a platform if you're surfacing their needs, right? And the numbers are huge. I mean, the numbers over there are huge.
You have grabbed entire like a session of machine learning geniuses from his like plethora of knowledge he had over the years. I guess that's it for now. And we hope to have you again on our next podcast to discuss more about personalization, more about next generation challenges that are going to arise in the way of personalization, and how as a technology people, we can help world to be more relevant for each and every person who are here.
So thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for asking some very nice detailed questions. So really enjoyed this app, and thanks for the invitation.
Thanks, Rishabh.